Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast. We have Chubby Chandler with us, aka Andrew Hinden. Chubby Chandler, he's a retired professional golfer and current managing director at Cheshire-based sport management firm International Sports Management (ISM). We're going to talk about his sports career. We're going to talk about some athletes that he managed, including Rory, McIlroy, I believe, one of the top golfer nowadays. This podcast is brought to you by podper.com. This is my podcasting company if you want to start or scale a podcast. Chubby, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Well, I went to school till I was 18. I was decent at cricket, and then I became better at golf. Golf took over, and when I finished school at 18, I worked in the winter, saved all my cash, and played golf in the summer. I did that for 3 years. I was a postman, a parcel porter, an asphalt labourer, anything that could go on in the winter that I could just pack in and then play golf in the summer. And then 21, I turned pro. And in those days, when you turned pro in Europe, I don't know whether it was the same in America, but in Europe, you had to turn pro, but for some reason, you couldn't win any money for 6 months. So you had to find a time that you could turn pro and not really miss anything. And then time it that when 6 months was up, you could start earning money. That was the idea. I actually didn't start earning money then either, so it didn't matter. And I was a pro then from end of 1974 till 1989. I played the European Tour for 14 years. I played the Sunshine Tour in South Africa 13 times. I went to the Safari Tour in Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Zambia, and Kenya for 1 year, not to go back. And then at the end of 89, I set up ISM. There was very little competition, and there was nobody doing player management that had played. So for me, it was a bit of a head start. You know, I knew what I was doing, or I should have known what I was doing. And I did okay. I signed guys up that I played with for the first 9 months. And then in August 1990, a young guy called Darren Clark came along, and he wanted a chat to see whether he should turn pro. And I advised him that he should do, because he'd be a better player. And then after an hour, he said, right, I just want to play golf. Can you do everything else? And I was always going to say yes. And that was the start of ISM, really.
Your career in itself, like, why didn't you continue playing golf, and why did you get into sports management and helping other athletes? Is it at some point you hit a ceiling, you're like, yo, I can't compete with these guys?
Yeah, sort of. I think I was improving still, but I was improving slower than the rest were. So I felt that there were young guys coming through that, and it was a start of people going in the gym and eating healthily and whatever. And that bit of missed me out. You know, I hadn't done that. And I had this opportunity to get a sponsorship deal for a couple of guys. Well, it was for me, but because I wasn't going to play, I said, well, it's not for me, but maybe I can do it and do the deal for somebody else and manage the program. And that's what I did, basically. It was a company called ICI, which was a huge British company. And there were two of the guys that I was already managing. We put a logo on them, and it was all to do with colors and dyes and film stuff, all with Japanese clients. And they were all crazy about the golf, the Japanese. So it worked out really well. We went to some nice places with them.
Right. What were the highlights of your career, your sports career, your athlete career?
My playing career. Yeah. I won a tournament. I won one official PGA sanctioned event. It was South American PGA, and it was the Sao Paulo Open in 1985. That was the only time I won over 72 holes. That's really the only one you can count. I won over 36 a couple of times, but in Britain, but that doesn't really count. The one in Sao Paulo was great because I shot 63 last round to win. And I followed that on, and that was in 1985, November or October. And I went on in 86 with that confidence and played the best year I had in Europe when I was, I think, 42nd in Europe that year.
And tell me about like the first big athlete you signed as part of your sports agency, and how did that feel?
I thought you'd research this. I signed a guy called Darren Clark, who was just about to turn pro, and he wanted a meeting to really pick my brains as to whether he should turn pro. After an hour, he turned around to me and said, "Well, I just want to play golf. Can you do everything else?" And I, without thinking, said yes. And I played with him a week later, and once I'd seen him play, I knew he was. We had a business. He was that good.
How profitable can that type of business be? Did it start to get profitable after 5 clients, or just after signing a superstar such as Rory?
No, we were already pretty good through Darren and Lee Westwood and one or two others. Rory was more the icing on the cake later on. We were already quite well established, and by then we probably had probably 20 clients by the time Rory came along. But Rory only came along because Darren had a foundation that was aimed at helping young Irish golfers, and Rory was on it from the age of 13. So I knew Rory from 13 years old, and he came along and caught the guys up fairly quickly. He didn't overtake them quickly, but he caught them up fairly quickly. And we looked after Rory for about 4.5 years as a pro, but already probably done about 3 years when he was an amateur, in the background, helping his dad sort out a few things and giving him a bit of advice. But he was always his own man, Rory. Always wanted to do his own thing. And after 4.5 years, Lee Westwood and Darren Clark was still way above him in the world rankings, but he wanted to be looked after on his own. So he left and wanted to be the big fish in a smaller pond.
And what kind of contracts do you sign with these athletes? What's included in there? And do you take like a percentage of their purse? How does that work?
Well, when Darren signed, he after about an hour and a quarter, he said, "What are we going to do about a contract?" And we met in a friend's lawyer's office, so it was pretty easy to get a contract done there. And I said, "Well, Mark McCormack and Arnold Palmer never had a contract. They just shook hands and said, okay, that's what we'll do." So we never had a contract. I didn't have a contract with anybody till probably 2008, 10, somewhere around there, and had to have one then from then on, because all the other management company knew all our athletes weren't under contract, so they were just coming at them left, right, and centre, and promising this, promising that, and promising a lot of things they couldn't deliver, but they sounded good, and it was that was tough, because then, like I say, then we had to become like everybody else and have a contract.
So let's say I'm really talented at golf. I should pretty much stay on the field and win championship. If I'm more business minded, I should start an agency and recruit all of these golfers. Would it be possible to even make more money than Tiger did? Why didn't he start his agency, for example?
I think, at the end of the day, he had his own man in that agency, so it didn't matter. And I don't know, but my guess is he has equity in that agency. I would guess. But he had his own man. He's had his own man for about 20 years, a guy called Mark Steinberg. And it's interesting with this LIV business right now, no players of Steinberg has gone to LIV. They've all stayed with the PGA Tour.
Right. And the next logical question, a guy like Tiger, he could probably start his own live. Why doesn't he do so?
He couldn't start his own LIV because you needed more money than even he would prepared to give. And if the golfers are smart, they don't give money to sign other golfers, do they? You know, they're their own business. And it was, I don't know what the Saudis have spent, but I would think it's between 2 and 3 billion. Maybe upsize of 3 billion, but certainly more than 2.
Do you think
And
it's a good investment for them?
for the Saudis, I think that to achieve what they've done in such a short time is incredible. And I think golf needed something. And I think that eventually it'll work its way out. But right now, nobody seems to be bothered. I think, sort of there was a lot of talk a year ago about them getting together, but I think that was for the sake of making it look as though golf wasn't in a war, because they don't seem to have done an awful lot to get together since that point. And, Tiger keeps saying, oh, he's had meetings for this, that, and the other, but, they accepted the PGA Tour accepted some investment from a bunch of big sports agencies, people, Fenway Sports, etc. If they were going to have the Saudis on board, they wouldn't have done that right in front of when they were going to do it. That was a definite, we're all right without you. And I think the Saudis also, they've got enough money to sit this out forever. And I think the LIV concept is the sort of brainchild of the boss of the Public Investment Fund, Yazir Al Rumayyan, and he's not going to let that go that easy either. It's his baby, so I don't think he's going to let it go. So I don't see anything happening now before 2026, and I don't actually know what's going to happen then, because there's a lot of posturing and nothing happening. It's not that difficult to work this one out if they wanted to.
Right. I think it's quite impressive how the Saudi took advantage of a really weak moat that the PGA had. And how I'm saying that is that the reaction of the PGA is to first go directly to the throat of the players, right, with their contract, and be like, you will not be able to come back here. It's also
Yeah.
about honor, which is a very weak moat, it's just a sign that this is not really working. But also it seems that, yeah, they invested, like you said, 2 to 3 billions. I'm just not sure how one could get an ROI on that, except maybe for the brand itself. Do you think a merger would be possible? Because not so long ago, we've heard about them merging their European operation, but that's not standing anymore, isn't it?
Well, the PGA Tour absorbed the European Tour mainly to make sure the European Tour didn't go out of business, and supported the PGA Tour. But I think, sort of, it depends what you call success for the Saudis. They have got almost the top in every sport right now. They've got some of the best footballers in the world playing there. Ronaldo, Neymar. When I say the best, the biggest names. They've got some of the biggest golfers. Mickelson, DeChambeau, Koepka, people like that. So they've done okay, and they've gone in at the top of boxing. What they're doing in boxing is amazing. I mean, there were 14 fights on that card on Saturday, and they weren't rubbish fights. There were some pretty decent fights. So they're making big moves in a lot of sport, and from being a country that nobody heard about 10 years ago at all, it was almost a mystery what was going on in Saudi, which is probably what they wanted, because there were some fairly interesting things going on. But I think that they've now sort of almost come out in the open, and they're beginning to accept ladies have got a place in life there. And I wouldn't be. They're building holiday resorts and cities, and 50 golf courses they're going to build. So they're going to end up being. I don't think they'll ever be like Dubai. I don't think that's their intention, but I think they will be like maybe Abu Dhabi, which is sort of more Muslim and more Arab than Dubai is. Dubai's gone too far, whereas I think they will make sure that Saudi remains somewhere near Abu Dhabi and Qatar. But it's an amazing place. The wealth is obvious because nothing's too much. The golf courses they build are very good. The hotels are amazing. So I think from the Saudis' point of view, it's probably going quite well, and I would think Yazzie is making some very good business contacts through his golf. And I think that was the idea. I think he wanted to be at the top table with the boss of AT&T and the boss of Charles Schwab and the boss of this, that, and the other, and that's the idea. What was always a bit of a misnomer was the PGA Tour are having doing all these sanctions against players playing in LIV, and yet FedEx, who sponsor the PGA Tour, have got a big Saudi investment in it. There were so many compromising situations that it was crazy. But I think they'll just go on their own way for a couple of years.
Yeah, it's a massive exodus of their petroleum dollars to diversify their portfolio as energy is shifting. So really smart move. Did you have some of your athletes go to LIV? Because it seems that, yeah, being there at the right.
Some of my ex athletes did, yeah.
Okay.
There's about 4 or 5 of them in there. And the one thing that's interesting, because I had the honor of having dinner and quite a long chat with Yazir. And when he was doing the flotation of Aramco, he was saying that there will be some interesting things happening in the due diligence because we have to make full disclosure. And he said, the world thinks we've got 25 years worth of oil left. And he said, they will find out we have 75 years of oil left. So basically, they had 3 times more money than the world thought they had. So there's a never-ending supply of cash there.
Yeah, just that the world is shifting to electricity. I mean, it's not super significant compared still to the huge petroleum market, but like, yeah, countries like Canada or the US, it's pretty rare to hear a car in Canada making the petroleum noise nowadays. They're all silent cars, Teslas, Prius, and so forth. In my native Quebec, there's huge incentive to adopt these cars. But yeah, petroleum is not only used for cars as well; it's used for a bunch of other
All sorts, yeah.
yeah, machinery and so forth. Now, the ethical concerns to sign up with the LIV, if you were a golf player being offered such a life-changing contract, would have you said yes, or would have you considered it 2 times?
It was really interesting because I obviously knew a lot about the players that were signing and the contracts that were going about, and an awful lot of the players were either oldish or injured. Brooks Koepka had a bad injury. Bryson DeChambeau had an injury. Phil Mickelson's old. Ian Poulter's old. Lee Westwood's old. So the guys with injuries, they would be silly not to take the cash. There's a guy at my golf club, Sam Horsfield, that plays for the Majestics. He was saying, he signed not because he had a big upfront money or anything like that, but just that they guaranteed him to play for the cash because he had a very serious hip condition, and he had to have an operation which he had, I think, earlier this year, and he didn't know how successful that would be. So if somebody's waving a chunk of dollars and the opportunity to play less for more, then you'd be crazy not to take it.
Tell me about injuries in the world of golf, because we look at golf in this sort of hobby kind of sport, but it's a really quick release of energy. around the hips, around the joints, the articulations. Yeah, what types of injuries in the sport, and how do you prevent these?
Well, the game's moved on probably through Tiger. Tiger started everybody going in the gym. So everybody then became fitter and stronger. And when they became fitter and stronger, then they used their body in a different way, and they used it a lot more. So even though they were fit and stronger, they were putting more pressure on their body. I mean, I don't know whether you watch golf, but I watched last night this USPGA, and Bryson DeChambeau hits the golf ball harder than anybody I've ever seen. There is so much effort goes into how far he hits it, and his body will break eventually. I mean, that's what happens. Happens with footballers. Happens with baseball pitchers. Happens with everybody that puts a lot of pressure on their body. In the end, it breaks, and that's why I think that these guys, whether they're the top of the tree in the PGA Tour or the top of the tree in the LIV Tour, they're making significant amount of cash, but it may not be for long. They may only have 10-year careers, whereas Arnold Palmer had a 50-year, 40-year career.
Tell me about the mental side of the game, because there's top players with a killer mindset. Rory is certainly one of these, or Fitzpatrick, that is super like technical and analytical. And there's like folks like Joel Damon that have big talent but don't really believe in themselves. Do you feel that this is the difference between being a top 100 and a top 10?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Before you got to that, I was going to say, well, Joel Damon's where he should be for the amount of mental effort he puts into it. At the end of the day, and it's not for everybody. I mean, you can't have everybody playing like Tiger Woods and being mentally strong like Tiger and whatever. The world's full of different people. The world's interesting because everybody's different, and it's the same on the golf tour. And you see a guy there yesterday, Xander Schauffele. I mean, he's physically made himself bigger. He he hits the golf ball maybe 15, 20 yards further than he did 2 or 3 years ago, and he's a very focused guy. You can see he's very intense, but not like Tiger was, but not far off it. And then you see other guys that are less intense and play with a bit more freedom. But everybody works out the best way they can play.
And what after career do these folks have after they are done with golf, after they retire? Is it just selling their likeliness, their image? Is it investing
Yeah,
in various
it,
businesses?
it's changing all the time, isn't it? Because they're making more and more money, so there's less need for them to have a big career after golf. The days of top players being a commentator probably are gone because they don't need the money that they used to have. When Johnny Miller became a commentator, even when Nick Faldo became a commentator, they still needed the money. Whereas now these guys are making hundreds of millions, and they don't need to put themselves sitting in a booth for 4 hours every Saturday and Sunday to earn another 300, 400, 500 grand a year, maybe a million. Doesn't matter. It makes no difference. So I think when they're going to spend much more time with their families. They may do a bit of course design. Course design, at the end of the day, is purely the culmination of an experience you picked up over a career. And everybody thinks if they're a golfer, they all think they can design a great golf course because they've seen so many. It's actually very difficult, but some of them will do that. But I don't know. I don't think there'll be any set thing that guys will go into. They'll all have their different business interests. I mean, Rory, I think, has an unbelievable portfolio of investments. He's very close to the guy that runs his investments now, and he's been ridiculously successful off the course with them.
Right. Yeah, and course design, I guess, also lending your name to it as well. Now,
Yeah,
you said they're getting paid more. I don't think the game of golf is growing in popularity. You might correct me on that. Is it mostly because of Live that they're getting higher purses? What do you attribute that to?
yeah. The person who've gone on LIV and on the PGA Tour to compete with LIV, And you say it's not getting more popular. It may not be getting more popular in eyeballs on the TV set, but there's far more people playing. I can only talk about Britain, but it's gone from 5 years ago. It's gone from 3 million active players to 5 million active players. So there's people participating, and people investments companies have come up with ideas for people to participate in golf, not just on golf courses, but driving ranges have become more interesting. So I don't have an issue at all with golf, and I don't care whether people watch it on telly, because people choose to watch golf on telly. And to me, most golf on television is not very exciting because it's slow. We're getting used to shorter sports, and they seem to take longer and longer to hit a golf ball. I know baseball recently have tried to quicken that game up, and I think it's important from a sponsorship point of view. But I don't think the fact that not as many people watch it on telly is that important. I think the fact that more people play it is more important.
Right, because I think what has increased in the last couple of years is like that health consciousness amongst people. Some go hiking, some go in nature, but golfing is literally being in nature and chilling and breathing good air and having fun. So for some,
Yeah,
right? For some others, it's literally getting drunk on the course, like my
yeah,
younger
yeah,
self.
yeah. But it's called COVID. COVID has brought that out because if you remember, at the halfway through the first year of COVID, everybody was encouraged to play golf, to get outside and go and play golf, and that's been a massive boost to the game.
Right. I think also people want to know the mental side of it and learn more about the athletes, which is why teleseries like Full Swing on Netflix are picking up popularity. Drive to Survive, I think, brought that concept right with the F1 stuff. What are your thoughts on this more personal view of the player inside and out?
Yeah, but don't you think? I think all those sports came because Drive to Survive was so successful, and Drive to Survive was almost explaining a sport to people. People know golf, so people just wanted to know what was going on behind the scenes and some of the sort of like the relationships. Whereas Drive to Survive, you actually learnt about the sport, and because I could never understand why the cameras, sort of centered on 12th and 13th in a Grand Prix, and I thought, why are they doing that? But once you watch the Drive to Survive, you understand that one position is very big, and the fact that the biggest competition there is between the teammates.
Right. And one of the aspect that's also cool is that these teleseries, they don't only film the most victorious person, they also film the one that's struggling, like Joel
Sure,
Damon, for example. And we
sure.
see the struggle of being there and how hard it is, and I think we can relate to that.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, what
I agree.
other sorts of innovation would you see in the sport of golf? How about we film the power of the swing, the speed of the swing, like full swing shows how much they're actually making per tournament. Wouldn't it be fun to know like the heart rate of the player or what's going on in their mind? Like what sorts of innovation
Yeah,
would you bring to the game?
they've done a bit of that, but I think it's too hard to sort of show it. Um, they can strap you up and show you heart rate and this, that, and the other, but the problem is when in the majors when the golf's the most important, people don't want a microphone thrust under the chin. I mean, Rory got terrible criticism, and I thought it was poor when he did it at the Masters. You'd have never seen Jack Nicklaus do that. You'd have never seen Tiger Woods do that. And I'm all for being innovative. I'm all for being, sort of opening up. But when the thing's that important and he hasn't won it, then why take the risk that your mind's going to wander because you're trying to be nice to an interviewer? I don't know
Yeah,
what they can do. I think the one of the things that Liv could have done was make the teams a bit different. To have just four players. It didn't do anything for me. I think if they'd have had a captain and a good player and a senior that's a legend, and Ernie in the South African team. If Ernie else had been in it, it would have been more interesting, I think. And then a lady. And that would have then made it look like a team competition, because when it started, it didn't look like a team competition. It looked like an individual competition.
Yeah. Or speed golf could be fun. People would actually run to the
Yeah.
balls.
Yeah. Well, and even the thing that Rory and Tiger are supposed to be doing, I think it's nearly right. I mean, there's a way of doing it. I think they'd have been better making it smaller, and you actually did play just on a little simulator, and they did a Q&A halfway around or something like that. I think to try and do a big league because they're actually hitting it about 100 yards into a net. They don't need to do that. They can just hit it 10 yards into a net and still get the same readings. But it'll all shake out. Smart people will think of good ideas, and some will die and some won't. Top Golf's been an incredible success. That was never going to be any good. When it came out 20 years ago, people looked at it and they, who's going to do that now? Whole gangs of young people turn up, have a few beers, the girls have a go, the music's going. It's really cool.
What about betting? Could we have more bets on shot and who wins the hole as fans?
Yeah. Yeah, they have that now. They have that now. In fact, there's a couple of betting sites that are the best way to follow the golf. They're actually almost more up to date than anybody else. Because, of course, on TV, it's never quite live. It might be 5 seconds behind, it might be a minute behind. It's never quite live. Whereas on the betting site, it has to be live. Because if they don't get that right, they do their brains in.
So what's next for you this year? What are your top goals?
Well, we've got a live event at my golf club, JCB. So I'll be interested to see how that goes. I don't have much of a part to play in it because Liv take it over, but I actually essentially got it there, and I play a bit of golf and help a couple of young guys and travel and see a few friends, and just. I'm 71. I've done enough traveling. I travel still, but I travel when I want to.
Right. And where can people find out more about you?
Very difficult. They'll have to talk to you now, won't
Yeah, exactly. Or Google
they?
Chubby Chandler. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
All right. It's a pleasure. That went all right in the end.